One of the most popular upgrades you can do on your 2014 Tundra today is the NSV Light Bar. This thing is an OEM fitment, OEM quality part. It's totally plug and play. You can do it in a couple hours at home. And the best part about it is it's got a ton of cool features. You've got a swipe feature, you've got a sweet switch panel that goes in the inside center console. And this truck behind me is a 2019, it's got 3,000 miles on it. This is one of the first upgrades he's ever gonna do on the truck, and it's gonna be one of the best ones. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do it. Let's get started. Now, before we go any further, one thing I'd like to tell you guys is if you are installing this light bar, make sure you have the most up-to-date instructions. We do our best to work with NSV and make sure that our videos are as up-to-date as possible with their pamphlets. This is the 3rd generation light bar. We've done 3 of these full-length install videos. We try to keep up with it, but on the off chance they change anything, we will update our website immediately. So by all means, check that out. Make sure what you get in the box matches the website. We'll keep looking out for you guys. Now the first step in getting this thing installed is popping the hood, and we're going to disconnect the negative battery terminal on the battery. With a 10mm socket, go ahead and loosen this nut on the battery terminal. We're just going to set it off to the side for now. So we've got 3 10mm bolts to remove from under the hood. We've got the first one here, second one's right here, and the third one's right here. And really all you need for this whole disassembly is a 10mm socket. Now there are 3 plastic clips you need to squeeze to release. There's one here, here, and here. Go ahead and press in on it with the pliers and push it toward the front of the truck. You'll see that whole hood bulge release like that. Here's the second one. Now at this point, you can take this hood panel, you can lift up on it a little bit. It's going to pop free and pop toward you. We can bring it to our workbench. So now that we've got our hood bulge off the truck, there are 6 total Phillips screws that we need to remove from this vent system here so that we can install the light bar. There are 5 along the bottom, and there's 1 up top. So with a Phillips screwdriver or a drill, you can start from one side, Now, with the screws removed, you're going to be able to remove this black plastic piece. Now, along the top on this particular truck, this is a 2019, there are some plastic sections that are like plastic welded to the top. You can remove this anyways. It's going to put up a little bit of a fight. I've done it off camera here. This is where those areas are. And on the other trucks we've done this on this channel, I haven't really had one put up a fight as much as this one did, but we also haven't done a 2019. So it might just be a little design difference they've got on the newer models, but don't worry about it, the light bar installs the exact same way. Now for the exciting part. We can take our NSV light bar and in that same exact area that you just removed that black vent, take the bar, lightly set it over the top. You're going to see exactly how this thing mounts up and how everything goes in just a second. You'll see a few mounting holes here where you can put some of the original screws back in. We've also got a tricky bracket system that goes up top. It's really straightforward. I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do it. But the first time that I did it off camera a few years ago when these first came out, I was like, how does this work? So I'll show you exactly how that goes. We can go ahead and reinstall our original screws. So I'm going to start with these bottom 5. Go ahead and just hand thread it in. Get everything lined up first before you snug it down. This hood bulge plastic is pretty thin, and so if you tighten it out of order or out of sequence in any way, it will prevent you from getting some of the other hardware in. And then finally, I'm going to reinstall that top screw. So now that I've got all the screws started, I'm going to run through and just tighten them down, and then we've got to install these plastic brackets too. They help just brace the top of the light bar itself. All right, now the last thing we need to do before this light bar is fully installed in this hood bulge is install these plastic brackets here. They come in a little baggie. You're going to have 4 screws with them and 4 plastic brackets. They are labeled L1, L2, R1, R2. Go ahead and just follow that. Obviously the R means right, L means left. Starting from over here, the way these things install is you've got this flat piece here and it goes under these little trim plastic pieces that we popped out to get this grill apart. And you just tuck it inside there, press down on it, and install the screw. So our light bar is mounted. Let's take a look at how this thing looks. Now, depending on your work surface, you might want to throw down a cloth, a blanket, some painter's tape. Maybe you're doing this on the couch at home. Just use your common sense, make sure you don't scratch up your painted pieces. Now, in the intro of this video, I talked about how this is an OEM quality piece. And honestly, look at the fitment of this bar, left to right, up and down. There's no major gaps, there's nothing crazy. It looks like this light bar could have came from the factory, from Toyota, with this thing installed. And you're gonna find that throughout the entire install process, the wiring's like that, the connectors are like that, the instructions are like that. Honestly, this thing could have came from the factory. Wouldn't be surprised if someday they do. But let's keep going. Let's get this thing working. I cannot wait to see how bright it is. As you guys can tell, we're now on the inside of the vehicle. If you're following the instructions, you now need to run the 6-pin harness from the interior to the exterior so that we can continue working in the engine bay. So, grab onto your door sill panel here. You can get under it with your fingertips. Lift up on it to pop it free. And remove it from the vehicle just like so. Now we need to remove this kick panel here. There is a little plastic nut here and you can turn it counterclockwise. It'll thread right off. You can do it completely by hand. You don't really need to use tools. Set that off to the side. We will need it later. And then this whole kick panel just pulls toward you. Just like that. Now just beyond that kick panel that we just removed, you're going to find a factory wire harness here with a rubber grommet around it. And the instructions tell you that you can cut a nipple off on the outside of the grommet in the firewall and you can pass the wiring through. You can also use a wire fish through this grommet. You can cut a little slit in it and pass it through the bottom. I've found that to work really well as well. And so that's exactly what I've gone and done here. So I'm going to use my wire fish, push it through the bottom. And we're now in the engine bay. At this point, I can electrical tape my wiring to the wire fish and pass it through. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I wanted to just show you guys the wiring that I am working with here. This is the 6-pin harness that the NSV instructions are referring to. I'm going to tape this to my wire fish. You can also, if you don't have a wire fish, I use an old zip tie and I've cut the end off and it works really well. If you don't have a wire fish, you can just tape these together with electrical tape. A little bit of soap and water on that grommet. You can pass them right through. There's plenty of slack and you can feed this through into the engine bay. The rest of this harness stays under the steering column and it's going to connect to our turn signal switch and our switch panel that we're installing. So at this point we can pull our wire fish through the engine bay. As you're going to see, the wiring comes through just like so. Go ahead and pull your harness about 6 inches through. We're going to do the pinning right here of the connector. At this point we need to pin our 6-pin connector, and the sweet part about these is the supplied black 6-pin connector is numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across, and each of these wires is labeled as well, so there's really nothing to it. Go ahead and insert it just like so, and you'll hear it click into place as you do each one. Now please try to do this in the right order. These are no fun to de-pin. We've had customers try to do it, and it's the last thing you want to be doing right now. So take your time, get them installed the right way the first time. All right, with all of them clicked in, go ahead and install the little red plastic retainer. That locks into place just like so. And make sure that these things are all seated properly. They should all click when you push them in. Make sure they're good and secure. The last thing you want to do is have one of these back out on you later on. It's a troubleshooting dilemma if that happens. So we need to do one more little round of fishing here. We've got our 12-pin connector, and this actually needs to go through the hood up into the light bar. Now, once again, I'm going to use this fish. For this one, you definitely don't need to. You can just tape this up with electrical tape by itself. It's rigid enough, and you can send it through the hood hole up to the hood bulge area. It's not a big deal. I'm going to use this. It makes it a little bit easier. Totally personal preference. And the hole we're going to be using is this one right here. It's the one closest to the firewall, and it's got plenty of room for all of the 12 wires. So it might take a few tries, but eventually you're gonna get your wiring up and to the right here in the hood. So you can see my fish finally popped out over here. There's quite a large channel along the right side of the hood for it to pass through, but it is also easy for your wiring to get caught up kind of in the middle of the hood, so you might need to pull it out, retry a couple times. Go ahead and pull a little slack forward, and at this point I'm gonna lower the hood down just enough to be able to work with the pinning. So if you used a wire fish, go ahead and unwrap it at this point. Now there's only one thing you can really make a mistake on this install. It's really easy to do. A lot of people have done it, and so I'm going to be very, very deliberate in how I try to help you guys out here. When it comes to pinning the 12-pin connector, you need to look at it exactly like this. Pins 1 through 4 go along the outer left side. Pins 5 through 8 go in the middle, and pins 9 through 12 go on the outside. Now there is no pin 3 on this harness. That's what messes people up. They'll accidentally put pin 4 in pin 3, and then they get to the end and they're short 1 pin. Do not put a pin in pin 3. So you'll find on your harness there is no pin 3. That's intentional. Leave it blank and just keep pinning the harness. So as you can see, I've got pin number 1 installed in the pin number 1 slot. Take pin number 2. And once again, these should all click in very, very securely, just like that 6-pin harness. You can probably hear that on camera. If it doesn't click in like that, chances are it's not seated properly. Give it another try. Make sure that it's in there properly. Now, like I said, there's no pin 3. So at this point, I'm skipping pin 3. I'm going directly to pin 4. Clicking that into place. As long as you do it just like that, you're not going to have any trouble. Moving on to pin 5. I'm going to try to flip this around just so you guys can get a little bit better view of it. I apologize if you can't quite see exactly which pins I'm installing. I'm doing my best for you. But like I said, as long as you follow the pin out guide in the instructions, you're not going to have any trouble. And finally, we've got pin 12. Now you should be ending on pin 12. If you're ending on pin anything else but 12, it's time to double check your work and unfortunately depin and repin the connectors, but thankfully everything went just fine for me. So 12-pin connector is pinned. Let's get the light bar over here. Let's get that thing installed. So go ahead and grab your hood bulge, and you'll notice that there are these connectors on the back side of it. These can just get connected to each other. They just connect the bar segments together. So just clip them together like this. It's the same thing on both sides. Just clip these together like so. You can tuck the excess wiring into the hood when we get there. Now, bring this back to the truck. It's going to clip into place just like it was before we added this light bar. Go ahead and plug in your 12-pin connector. And finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. Really goes in one way, and as you can see, it fits so well. Now at this point we can put all of the bolts back in that hold the hood bulge to the hood itself, and we can keep moving with the install. This makes it so worth it at this point. Look at how well this fits the truck. It looks like it came from the factory like this, and wait until you see it powered up. Wait till you see it at night on a dirt road. You're gonna love it. So at this point I'm gonna run through and just make our positive and negative battery connections for the light bar harness itself. And then we've got that little 6-pin connector there that I'm just gonna plug to the rest of the harness, and then for the most part, we're done under the hood. Obviously, we have to reconnect the battery. We've got a little wiring to do yet on the interior, so I'm going to leave that disconnected for now. So we've got our positive terminal here. It's fused and it feeds the light bar harness with power. And we're just going to go ahead and loosen up this 12mm nut here for the battery. Go ahead and attach that just like so. Put the nut back on. Cinch it down just like so. I'll loosen this negative terminal here. Like I said, those are both 12s. Attach that negative eyelet. And then finally, we're going to plug this 6-pin connector in right here. Now, I'm going to leave all of this a little bit loose for now. I'm going to come back through here and zip tie it when I'm sure that everything works properly and that I don't have to change anything around. Last thing I want to do right now is make it look pretty and make it look permanent and then have to tweak anything. So in the NSV kit, you're going to get a harness that looks like this one here. This is a patch harness, and it allows us to connect our original factory connector from the vehicle to the NSV light bar. So there are two different connectors on here. One goes to your factory turn signal plug. The other one goes to your power adjusting headlight motor. Now this part, I'm just gonna warn you guys ahead of time. This was tricky to film for us. It's a tight area. Trust me, this one right here, the power self-leveling motors on these headlights, you can reach the plug. It's against some sheet metal, it's a tight fit, but you can reach it, I promise. You just might have to fight with it a little bit. So we're gonna disconnect that and plug it into our T-harness here. So after reviewing our footage, I realized we didn't quite get a shot of this just because that sheet metal is literally right here. You can hardly even touch it, let alone see it. We wanted to be able to show you guys exactly how this T-harness installs, so there's no question at all when you're doing this at home how this all goes together. This is your factory adjustable motor connection for your headlight. Go ahead and press in on the tab here. Plug in the NSV harness to the motor and plug the original motor connector into the NSV harness. So you can see we've now teed off that connection. It's routed like so. That's how you do it. Now at this point, we've got our patch connector right here. We've made our connections to the headlight motor assembly here. Go ahead and unplug your turn signal connector here. And it's going to connect directly to that patch harness. Plugs in like so. Now, we do have another section of harness. It's that same harness that we ran our light bar wiring to earlier. Bring that down alongside the headlight at this point. It's going to plug in right here. And this connector goes to our original turn signal. So we've got our turn signal connector here, and since this truck is equipped with factory LED headlights, it is a 2019 factory LED headlights, I need to cut this blue wire right here at the headlight. Go ahead and cut it just like so. Pay careful attention to the instructions. If you need to cut this wire, you need to cut it at this connector. Now a lot of you won't have to cut this wire depending on how your truck's equipped. If you need to, do it exactly like that. A little piece of tape on there just to keep it from touching any metal. We don't need any problems. Now we can button this thing up. All right, so we've only got a few steps left. We're in the interior of the truck now. We've got two 10mm bolts to remove from down here. This little panel here, we're gonna pry that down. We're gonna remove the steering column here, and that's gonna take two Phillips screws, one on the left, one on the right. We'll be able to run a little bit of wiring, then we'll be working on the center console, and then finally, I keep saying that, but finally, you guys will be able to see the light bar that we've been working on all evening. Let's get in here and get these 10mm pulled out. All right, with those removed, I'm going to just pull this whole panel down. Now we're being very mindful of the airbag SRS unit here. We're not going to try to mess with that at all. That's going to stay right in place. Pull that down just like that. And now we can remove our steering column. So we've got one Phillips screw right here. We've got another one on the exact opposite side of the steering wheel. Go ahead and remove those. Now with the panel below hanging like this, it's perfectly okay. It's not heavy at all. It's not stressing the wiring. And with these screws removed, we can go ahead and remove the steering column plastic shroud here. And honestly, it just pulls down easy as that. Set it off to the side. Now, if you guys remember the wiring that we ran in here earlier, we've got a T-harness here, and then we've got a couple connectors for our switches. We're going to use the T-harness, and we're going to route it up here along the steering column area. Try to follow other wiring if you can. There's a main harness that runs right up here. Last thing we want to do is get anything caught in our steering. And we're going to be plugging it into this switch right here. So go ahead and press in on this tab. Plug this connector in, like so. Plug the other end back into the turn signal switch, and go ahead and zip tie this up nice and tidy so we don't get it caught in anything. Leaving a little slack is not a bad idea. This steering column does move, and you should definitely set this up with the steering column as far toward you as possible. At this point, we can reassemble the steering column and run our wiring over to our center console area. I'm going to show you guys how to get the center console piece out. It's a little tricky with a pry tool, but you can do it no problem. And then we'll get that thing taken care of. So using a flat pry tool, the easiest way to get this little console area out is just to pick a corner, start at it. It's a pretty tight fit, honestly. They use pretty good clips on these from Toyota. So just be gentle, work your way along the sides, but it does pop right out. As you can see, I worked my way around it and it popped out just fine. Go ahead and unplug all of these connectors. All right, once again, let's take this over to our table. All right, so we've got our two switch panels out here. I've got my NSV switch panel on the left, I've got my factory switch panel on the right. As you can see, this thing is quite an upgrade here. We've got these sweet red switches with the covers, and you can see what features to expect from the NSV light bar. We've got the actual light bar main power button here that activates and deactivates the light bar itself. We've got the swipe function right here, which I'm going to show you guys all kinds of cool footage on that. And then we've got our DRL on and off button here. Some people like the DRLs, some people don't. It's absolutely up to you, and with this switch, you can turn them on and off at your will. So what we need to do is fill in these slots here in the NSV panel. Now the only tricky one to remove out of all of these, surprisingly enough, is the 12-volt plug right here. For some reason, the way these things are set in there, they are tough. But if you use a small, flat micro screwdriver like this one, you can get alongside these tabs here, pry them out while pushing this 12-volt socket toward the front of the faceplate. It'll pop right out. It's a tight fit, I'll just admit that right now. Push it all the way through. And then finally you can take this little trim ring here, press in on its tabs. Those tabs are on the top and bottom. Press down, push it through, and we can transfer that over to our switch panel here. So the first thing you do is you install this trim ring like so. Press this in. There we have that. Next, we've got our little USB auxiliary charger here. We've got a charger and 3.5 jack. And those are awfully simple compared to what we just did. You can press in at the top and bottom. Reinsert it just like so. And then we've got the Toyota security module, or you'll have the blank plate in place of this, and that just installs the exact same way. Now, the last thing we need to do on this switch panel, we need to take all of these clips here. We've got these 4 outside yellow clips. We've got these 3 white clips along the top. We need to transfer those off, and I'm going to warn you here. The first time I ever did this, I got under them with a pry tool, and I shot 2 of them at least across the shop, never to be seen again. So if you're at this point, trust me, put your hand over them, work in a clean space, be mindful of your surroundings, because it's easy for these things to go flying off. But you can get under them with a flat screwdriver or a pry tool and just push them toward your fingers. And like I said, be careful. They have a little bit of spring tension behind them. All right, take your new NSV switch panel and just put these things right back on. There we have it. All right, this thing's all put together. Let's go throw it back in the Tundra. So guys, at this point, our remaining harness needs to get run over to our switch panel, and it's just down by our feet right now. We can run it right across. You can reach it with your hand from the switch panel opening. There's nothing else to it, so run the fuse taps and the switch connectors over to there now. Then we can install our switch panel. All right, so we've got our switch connectors in here and we've got our T-taps. I'm gonna do the T-taps first, and they just go to this red wire here on one of our cigarette lighter plugs, the 12-volt plugs that we unplugged earlier. So just feed that right through like this. We're gonna click it together. We're gonna clamp it down. Sometimes I cheat and use pliers. Just make sure that I get a good connection there. Press it together like that. Make sure it's nice and secure. That one is. Do the same for this red one here. This is really just for the illumination and everything, and the switch power itself for our NSV light bar. Clamp it down. Now everything for the most part is labeled here. We can take our light bar connector, that is this far left switch. Plugs in just like that. We've got our swipe connector, that's the middle switch. And then finally we've got our DRL connector, and that is the far right switch. Plug in your remaining accessories. And you can finally return your switch panel back into the vehicle just like this. Look at how great that fits. It looks like it came like that from the factory. Like I said earlier, I've said it many times in this video, this is an OEM equivalent part. It looks so good in this Tundra. All right guys, moment of truth. It's time to reconnect the battery. I know you've been waiting for this. Plug that in, nothing crazy happens. Tighten it up. All right, let's see how this light bar works. All right guys, as you can tell, there is a little bit of work involved, but it is so worth it. Look at how this thing fits. Look at how it performs. It's unbelievably bright. It looks as good as if it came from the factory itself, and it matches this brand new Toyota Tundra. Now, if you need anything else for your Tundra, maybe you didn't get the truck with the LED headlights from the factory. We just got done doing a full LED bulb shootout, showing you every option on the market today that is worth anything on these trucks. I show you guys what it looks like on the wall, how good it is, what you should buy, what you shouldn't buy. We've got the world's brightest reverse lights, the world's best cargo lights. Check us out, headlightrevolution.com. Thank you for watching.